Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the October 11th regular meeting of the East Lyme Board of Finance to order. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, I'll move on to delegations. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the board this evening? Seeing no hands, we'll move on to the approval of the September 13th, 2017 minutes.
You need four for a quorum? You need four, you don't have a quorum.
Move to approve the minutes, regular minutes of September
abstain, I wasn't
13,
here.
2017. It's okay, you're here. You can abstain after the motion.
Okay.
Majority of those.
Okay. I'll second that. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I had a correction.
Okay.
Under G, under old business, A, purchasing policy, Mr. DeRosa noted that Mr. Weber has done a great draft on this. What I probably meant to say was a great job on the draft. Just. Thank you.
Probably should have put Mr., you meant to say that he wasn't here to present that draft.
Probably meant to say I was having some drafts at the time.
I think that was the only correction.
Is that it?
That's it, yep.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please say aye.
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 Abstain?
Abstain.
Okay, motion carries 301. With that, we will move on to the reports, starting with the Board of Education.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
I'm the representative, Tim Hagan, from the Board of Ed for the evening. We've got Jeff, Newton, our superintendent, and I. We're going to do a little tag team here, so he's got some fun news to share with you too. So everything is kind of moving along pretty well, actually, with the activities at the board and across our school district. Lots of exciting things are happening with all of our high school teams and alike. I don't know if you noticed in the paper, the boys cross-country team finally beat Norwich, and it was quite a big deal, and it was a very decisive victory, so it was pretty exciting. Work that we've been doing last couple of meetings, we've been working very hard on bringing to closure our long-range plan, our long-range coherence plan for the next 5 years. And off of that, we have hung district improvement plans and school improvement plans, which the board has reviewed, all of those, and those are all now up and running. From those, then we have constructed district, superintendent, and board goals specific for the coming year, for 2017, 2018 school year. And basically, the emphasis is on education, budget, and long-range capital plan, and the elementary school project. Those are the four major buckets that the board is actively engaged with. And the educational part is really very exciting, and I think we will be moving the quality of the education across all the students with this initiative over the next 5 years. We're very excited about it. The elementary redistricting work that we're doing, we have hired a company to help us, Malone and McBroom. Mike Zuba came and presented last night to the board. It's a preliminary readout on information about the demographics, where all the children are located in the district, where the housing starts are occurring, how the population dynamics will shift. And it was basically work in progress. He also presented to us a listing of attributes to take into account for making a decision on which redistricting option best suits East Lyme. And so the board will be working on establishing a criteria, decision analysis criteria, to help facilitate that. All of this work is ongoing. We expect to have a report from them in November. We will then give, and we're going to be working on our criteria in October. That will all lead up to having options to be reviewed late December, early January, and then there'll be all sorts of community engagement with those. So keep you abreast of it. I think actually the demographic information is something that is going to be valuable not only for the school district, but probably is a good thing for the town to also have and take a look at it. The elementary school alteration project is really in full swing with the building committee that was established by the Board of Selectmen. We just had on October 6th the review of the first schematic design estimate, cost estimate, and it was pretty good. Actually, it was really good. Within the scope of the project that was laid out for the referendum, they now have, there was a conceptual design cost that we had. This is now a schematic design cost, and the numbers are very close, about $155,000 difference across that, and that's across, you know, a very large construction number, about like $25 million. So the estimates are really coming in well. There have been some things that have been identified that we didn't anticipate, and a couple of those items are pretty expensive. One is the recommendation from our fire marshal that this is the time we should replace all the fire alarm systems in the 3 schools, and that's going to be close to $1 million when you do all of it. So that's one of the things that's under consideration. Another is generators for the schools. We do expect some relief with the microgrid project that we're exploring, but those are kind of some big ticket items. So overall, everything's on schedule. Bids, the design packages should be all completed the end of the year. Things will go out to bid in January, and then we'll really be able to have all the final costs, so we can make decisions on exactly what we would add into the project if that's necessary. So we'll keep you every meeting. I assume we'll give you a little update on how that's all going. I think I covered. Oh, there was good news. Good news. The sewer pipes under Lily B. Haynes are clean as a whistle. And we had videos and videos of the sewer pipes under. If you would like to have a copy of it, we certainly can arrange to have that. The pipes that are out in the parking lot will be replaced. Those have been penetrated by tree roots, but that was part of the package to replace those. That means we don't have to dig up any floors in Lily B. Haynes, which is great news, and that actually turned into some cost savings. So, Jeff, you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. And that document that you have just lists all the items that were at the top that were planned on each page, and then at the bottom are the alternates. And again, no final decisions have been made on the alternates, but we've got some 2 major important ones with the generators and the our fire system, fire alarm system. Some good news I wanted to report, and just kind of pass this out. You've probably heard. East Lyme High School was actually we found this out last year. The state contacted us, which is very unique, and told us that we were being recommended, our high school, for the Blue Ribbon Award. So that was great, but they told us, hush, hush, you can't say anything. So we knew last spring that we were going to be receiving this award, and it had just recently had gone out, and we've been recognized with 3 other schools across the state, and this was a kind of a nice bulletin that just recently came out from our Connecticut State Department of Education. Thought I'd share the information. It's got the other 3 schools and some of the rationale as to why we were recipients of that award. The high school principal and one of the teachers will be going down to Washington beginning in November. We'll bring back the award. We plan on holding maybe a small community event of some sort, just as a little celebration. So you'd join us for that. So we were very excited about that nice recognition. I want to thank Peter for joining us for some of the admin negotiations that have been going on. It's been great having you, part of that process. We have wrapped that up, not ratified yet, so information will be forthcoming. But I think we've got a very fair contract agreement, tentative contract agreement that speaks to the budget situation that we're in and dealing with over the coming years. Also, I want to thank Bill for joining us and also Lisa as we had a little combined collaborative effort in talking about that non-lapsing education account, which really turned into focusing on the maintenance of our buildings and the maintenance of the town buildings and having a 10-year maintenance plan. So I've reached out to Joe Bergaw, and we're trying to share a maintenance of all of our buildings across the town, schools and senior center, for instance, library, to see if we can combine efforts in the maintenance of buildings, which could be a cost savings in the future. So we're working on that, right now. And I know you had asked Joe, I think at a previous meeting, to come back, I think in November, and kind of report out on some of that nature. So we're working together to maybe do a joint presentation. And Tim mentioned the long-range plan. We're excited about that. And our district improvement plan, we're planning a community event in early November to open the doors for parents to come in, community to come in and talk about the law and hear about our long-range plan. We plan on sharing out some information on that, so we invite you to come. So we're happy to come down and present any information on that as well, if you're interested. And that's it. That's all I have. Any questions at all?
I have one.
Go ahead, Peter.
You mentioned potential big-ticket additions, the fire alarms being about $1 million. The generators would be about...
Generators, they range, the two of them, the microgrid, we don't have to necessarily worry about Lily Haynes, but the other ones, Flanders, I think, was about or 190?
About just under 500,000.
500, okay.
That's going to be reduced as the micro, we're planning on, we're going to assume that the microgrid is going to go in. We may be able to go with a much smaller generator at Lily Haynes.
Right. I mean, I understand I'm asking a preliminary question. I'm just trying to get a, okay.
Absolutely.
So $1.5 million.
So we are, you think about the amount of, it's about, $1.5 million, and so, but our contingency, as you recall, we really put in a lot on contingency. Our overall contingency, excluding the contingency on bonding and financing, is over $5 million. So we're doing very well.
No, it sounds it. I was just curious. Good, good.
And I must commend the building committee is fantastic. Ray O'Connor is doing a wonderful job.
We've been able to establish a good working partnership with bills and so forth to make sure there's a streamlined process, so everything gets taken care of. So if we're audited, obviously at the end of the project, everything will be in alignment. So far it's working out great.
Beth, did you have a question?
Bill,
When did the issue of the fire alarm system come up from, was it post plan submittal?
In the middle, some discussions with our fire chief, Dick Morris. The system is, I don't know how many years old. It's tested every year. It works, but if you put smoke up against it, there's no telling. It's kind of like your house. Every 10 years you're supposed to replace your smoke detectors. Well, we haven't replaced detectors in well over 20 years, I think, in some cases.
Would that have been a reimbursable cost if that was originally in the plan because it's public health and safety?
Yeah, because it's safety security.
It will definitely be reimbursable.
Yep.
And there are a few other items too that are looking at.
Some windows.
The intercom system.
On like the items, are they going to do value engineering as to which ones you could live without?
That's right, yep.
Prioritizing
That's all,
is.
yeah, so what we have to do is get really good numbers on costs for those items, and then we probably, we'll go out to bid with those as alternates, and then see exactly what the price tags are, and then ultimately, everyone, we start making a decision to add some things in.
Thank you.
But we're watching the dollars carefully. That's what's most important. So we haven't broke ground yet. So.
I know. So.
Yeah.
$5 million is not that much of a contingency if you're already looking at potential 1 million gone from that prior to
Yeah, that's why we're
breaking ground.
scrutinizing and watching closely.
So the latest elevation estimate that you got was prior to finding out about this extra 1.5 million? You just said you got another estimate that came in within 150,000 of the previous estimate.
That was for the base, okay, so if you look at the scope of the project at the time of referendum, and then there was a conceptual design estimate that was generated for all of that work. Now what we have is a schematic design, first estimate. There will be 3 estimates that will be done on it. That comparison was only $150,000 more. So then there were ups and downs, things went up
But-
and up and down.
But my question was that did not include the new generators and new fire detectors.
That's why we're kind of keeping the things separate, so we can see how are we doing against the original scope. If we identify things that are mandatory or should be added in, we'll have that. And then if there's a wish list or something, we'll be able to look at that as well. So, and that's what we generate. The wish list is really largely within the scope of what the project is all about, providing safe, secure, environmentally, good environment for students.
Yeah, our focus remains safety and security, and what we had touted from the start with this at referendum. So that's when we prioritize, and that's first. So,
Thank you.
I just have a few questions for you, Jeff. Speaking about safety and security, do we write for any grants from the state of Connecticut for safety and security? I think there was money available after Newtown happened.
Yes, they've had an ongoing state security grant. We've taken advantage of that. It's gotten us new cameras and equipped the buildings with quite a bit. We will continue to look at those dollars. Hopefully I think they're in their 3rd year, maybe 3rd or 4th year.
3 out of 5.
Yeah.
They're going, or is it 10? I don't remember.
I don't know specific now. I know
But
that
we're
they're.
taking advantage of that every year.
We are trying,
For
yes.
some kind of improvements.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing is I didn't quite catch the name of the consultant that you're using for redistricting.
Malone and McBroom, Milone and then MacBroom.
They have a pretty good website, a lot of examples on the website, a lot of examples of assessments and analysis that they've done for various towns around the state.
How much are we paying them?
25,000. And then we whittled that down a little bit, and they added a few, another community forum. So we have 3 community forums coming up. Those will start in January, roughly, as well as all the workshops and time at the Board of Ed meetings.
And what's their project scope? What's the duration? 3 months, 4 months, as long as
Yeah,
it
I'd say
takes?
until January, February, we should be probably wrapping. And they started last month, September, so 4 months.
That's all I have.
I've got 2 other questions unrelated to the buildings. One of the things that I've inherited recently is on the treasurer on the band booster club. And one of the questions that the parents have been asking me is how does the Board of Ed allocate for extracurricular activities? Is there some formula that you have for academics versus arts versus social clubs and things like that?
For like the supplementals that we have,
Oh,
we're
your
providing.
Basketball and
Yeah,
football and
exactly.
soccer and band and
Yep.
cheerleading and lacrosse and
Yeah.
math counts and all that kind of stuff.
You have 2 sides, yeah. You have the academic side, and then you have the sports-related side and kind of non-sports, clubs, drama, those types of things. So it all adds up to one pot of money that's in the teacher negotiated contract. Supplemental, there's a last page of the contract that has all of our supplemental schedules and pay associated with those schedules. So we have a number of different clubs and activities, and all of our coaches are all leveled as to level 1, 2, and 3 when they're hired and their pay rate.
Not just the staff, though. I was looking at the cost for running the different extracurricular activities.
Yeah, it's up there. We've been talking about this
It's all in the
at
annual negotiations, and
it's all part of negotiations.
Annually in the contract.
It's all part of the contract and negotiated rates. And when we did the teacher contract, I think it was 2 years ago, we're in the 3rd year, there was a slight increase, as there was an increase in their pay.
But I suspect that you look at the different organizations and you want to make sure that there's some money put aside for the arts and some money put aside for the academic clubs and some money put aside for
Exactly.
the athletic clubs.
That's
and
right,
you
all
kind of-
spaced out, yes. Yep.
I figured you had something like that, but.
Yeah, there's a
Asked
whole
to ask, so
schedule
I
of,
asked.
yep, whole schedule of activities and events.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yep,
Any further questions?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much.
thanks.
With that, we'll move on to the report from the first selectman.
Well, kudos to the education system in this town, Blue Ribbon. It's awesome. We, as you know, spend less per child than many other towns in the state, most towns in the state, and we get these kind of results. That's a testament to our administration and our teachers, the magic in the classroom. Good news, bad news scenario, the state of Connecticut has announced they're gonna be repaving 156 next year. So the bad news is 156 is gonna get repaid. The good news is we were awarded 2 or 3 years ago, $500,000 to build the Cheney Park bathhouses. FEMA regulations have changed. We've gone through this before, I think with this audience, that we can't build a bathhouse at that level anymore. It would have to be either 10 feet off the ground or use a trailer system where we could take the trailer out, unhook
my
the
God.
permanent.
Will be as high as the bridge.
Yeah, I know, so.
And
Right,
handicap
so
and handicap accessible.
all sorts of jokes can circulate in there, and I'm not gonna go there, but there's a trailer, so we can get the trailer. The thing is, the pipes that would go in the ground would have to come all the way down 156 to almost where Dad's is, where the pump station is. And that's a lot of 156 that would have to be dug up. The expense of that would eat up almost the whole $500,000, because it's a state road, and you can't just put a strip of cut up, where you put the pipe in. You'd have to pave from end to end, 6 inches, 8 inches thick, whatever the state standards are. With the state doing this, we're gonna try to coordinate us putting the pipes in the ground and then paving over it, which that's why they give us a year's notice. Do you have any project coming up? Let's get this all together. So there is some coordination and some synergy with the state and with area towns. So we're very excited about that. We thought it was gonna be actually a year beyond next year, and another project fell apart in another town because they are doing a program as well. So we moved to the head of the line there. So we're busy working on the Cheney Park bathhouses. I had a telephone conference today with a person at DOT responsible for the train station study. You remember the state awarded, I think it was a couple $100,000 for a study of train station to be put in Niantic. That study is going on. They've identified 5 spots. They really think it's going to be 2 spots by the time they do all the economics of it. I was encouraged that I'm being put in the loop, which is good, and asked for this telephone conference. My only concern was that, first of all, we have a charming little downtown. We don't want a parking structure 4 stories high. And second of all, we don't want the parking that is to be considered for the train station to become, to eat up the beach parking that we already have. We are already crunched enough during the summers. And they know that. And they heard it loud and clear. They know this is how it would be accepted in our town. That's if it were to be downtown. And there's other spots, such as Rocky Neck area, that they are also considering that they would have a larger commuter station there. The one downtown would be more like, I think he said, there's a couple spots along the line here, east of Branford, but a few spots where it's a kiosk system. They really wouldn't need much more than 50 spaces at the very most, and the train might stop once or twice a day. This isn't going to be like Old Saybrook. This isn't going to be like New London, where the Amtrak stops and all that. This would be a smaller station with a couple convenient stops. More to come. We're going to have public forums at the beginning of the year on that. I was contacted, as you know, I wear the EDC hat in town, Economic Development person in town. I was contacted by a grocery chain, small, convenience, think Tri-Town, but maybe even smaller, who's looking for space on this side of town. For many, many years, Niantic residents have said, we miss our grocery stores downtown, and there is a chain that has been looking actively for a spot downtown, where we're trying to work with them to find a suitable spot somewhere this side of 95. And again, it would be small in nature, more of a convenience stop than it would be a large scale. We're not paving paradise, promise. L&M Hospital donated several dozens of Narcan prescriptions, I guess, or hits or whatever, to our police. We're using them more than ever for the people who may be overdosing on opioids. And L&M has stood up as a partner to all area communities, realizing the need and stepping up and helping out. So this is coming out of their community service money. And of course, now they're connected with Yale New Haven, and they're trying to lift their community outreach. So this is a good thing for our town as well as all area towns. We're told that this problem is not getting better anytime soon, and to prepare for much worse numbers and many, many more cases, which is so unfortunate. It's a year. I have a meeting in the next week or two with DOT to continue to discuss Exit 74. While the state has no money, and while they'll still be scratching their head to figure out how they're going to pay for these things, there's a needed upgrade to Exit 74 that was identified. Whether Costco comes or not, this was identified. This bridge was supposed to be actually replaced a couple of years ago, and they, unlike 156, they put us away from the head of the line, moved us back a little bit while we figured out our development goals with Costco and related economic development in that area. They need to do something about it. They're still engineering plans and looking at plans on what Flanders Road and Exit 74 and the on and off ramps would look like. It's a dangerous spot. Of course, it's just before a very dangerous highway split. It's cause of many, many accidents. It's just those on and off ramps alone. So that's coming up. That's ongoing. We had a public forum about 9 months ago over at the National Guard. Don't think that was put aside with all the state budget issues and that being the focus. There is still a DOT working on. Listen, they have to continue to maintain and make progress. I believe on projects like that, it's 80 or 90% of that is federal money. So they still have federal money coming in that they need to spend on projects that are necessary. And lastly, you've heard twice Board of Ed talk about the microgrid. Board of Selectmen chose to get into a contract with a group who will author an application for us to get in line on money that DEEP has already bonded and is sitting in an account, $26 million, for the creation of microgrids throughout our state. And they've identified our town as one that would be acceptable. They came to us. So that's good news. And what microgrid will do is take in a facility the size of about a tractor trailer or smaller, take a natural gas input and turn it into electricity. When we're using electricity, we'll be getting it off of that island, as they call it, and when we're not using it, it would go out to the grid, if you will, and we would receive 1.5 cents less per kilowatt measurement, however they bill us. We get a discount on that, and there's an offshoot byproduct, which is hot water. When this process happens, there's a hot water because it takes water in, and the water that leaves the trailer is hot. So putting it next to, more than likely, Lily B, going right into the boiler room, and we'll receive free hot water, in a sense, free heat. Or heated water, which will also save on our energy costs. This would be in an area that has many town facilities, and of course, as you know, our middle school is a 7-town emergency shelter, Our community center is a backup shelter as well. So that's why they chose this area. We have 2 schools, we have the community center, we have 2 water wells, and we have a sewer pump station. So there's so much government synergy going on there that this is an ideal spot, and this is why they identified it, Eversource, and came to us as a potential recipient of some of this grant money. This would be 100% paid for by this grant money, including the people who are putting the application together. Then we'd go find a vendor who would actually put it together, and there's an approved list of vendors, and this thing would appear probably alongside of the school program.
Great.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how much that translates into savings? The 1.5 cents or whatever per kilowatt? I mean,
We threw some numbers around, Joe. Do you remember?
Well, 17% reduction in electricity costs. I don't know what the Board of Ed side, I think the town side, I'm gonna say it's about 15, 20,000, but that's just for the community center. Then you have the water and sewer component, which is obviously not the taxpayers, but it's the same cost.
The ratepayers.
And then, it's the ratepayers, and then you have 2 humongous school facilities there that, I don't even know what their electric bills are, so it's gonna be about a 17% reduction out of what we're paying electricity, and we have, Mr. Nichols is gonna be paying something out of our pockets for it.
we just provide the land for them to put this unit on, and in exchange, we get this 17% reduction. I'm just trying to,
It's a 20-year power purchase agreement with another company. The grant is to put all the infrastructure, tie it together, and
But,
the fuel
yeah.
cell appears by use on it, and then they
Right.
sell us the power at 1.5 cents less than what we would pay.
This is why we don't need, possibly will not need a generator, as this is a backup system. The whole purpose for the state of Connecticut going out and creating this microgrid fuel cell technology and encouraging it and therefore bonding it at the time is because of, the idea started with the Irenes and the Superstorm Sandy and the system falling down and towns not getting electricity back for 7 to 10 days. So bringing this technology in will keep the lights on in these areas even if the grid is down.
great.
So as it creates its own electricity.
We
Do you know
put one-
stuff about this?
Yeah, we put one at the high school, didn't we?
Maybe a generator, not a fuel cell.
I thought we put a fuel, yeah, we make, UTC makes fuel cells. We sold that company, I think, we did for a while.
Okay.
It's still a different technology.
Very possibly the high school / Flanders / central office, fire station, all being right in that area might qualify. After we get this project done, we may be able to qualify. They don't like to put 2 in one town. They like to spread it out, especially with we're already covering the shelter. But if there's money there and there's not a lot of applicants, we'll for sure go for it.
Yeah, there's 2 of them behind Cabela's.
Yeah,
Anything else?
that's my report.
Any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple related questions. Speaking of Eversource, the power lines that they're putting in through town, are you guys going through and inspecting the work they're doing on town property?
I don't believe so. Eversource, where they cross our streets?
Yeah, they're putting in
for
the
the
new power
high-
lines through town. I know,
They're replacing poles?
yeah, the poles and lines, both, right.
We don't,
No, that's not our
inspect that, that's not.
But where they're crossing the town here, for the work that they're doing on my property, they're doing a poor job. And I've called them back a couple of times to replace the grades and do things. They're damaging the driveways and stuff like that. They're going across curbs, I know, on Plants Dam. I know they're going on curbs in a couple of different places. The erosion control they're doing is maybe, but I don't want us to have to pay for the work that they don't do. And I can tell you that I had them back again a couple times now, and I've sent you some pictures from last time that they did damage on the house. They're not.
And those
good.
got fixed at the time, right?
They didn't fix it, and this group that's out now doing the whole work said they'll take care of it, and they haven't taken care of it yet
Yeah.
either. Their contractors are contractors. and
They're subs,
they
right.
do
Subs and subs
the
and
min they
subs.
can to get paid for it.
Well-
I would just like the town to walk the line, that's town property, and make sure that there's not damages to curbs and blacktop. They're taking tracks, metal tracks over my driveway and digging into them and stuff, so I gotta believe they're doing that to town property as well.
So noted, Mr. Weber. We have contacts at Eversource. They're fairly responsive, so you bring up a good point. So we'll take a look at that
Just checking what.
before they end their project.
The train station you're talking about, is that a high likelihood? Is that just a?
It's a study.
Unlikely?
study.
It's a
just
study.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Was that from a few
Um,
years ago, right?
You were talking about the ramps. There was discussion about closing the ramp next to the old Lulu's there. They talked years ago.
The latest schematic and plan was if they closed that, all the traffic would go through Flanders Four Corners, which couldn't handle that traffic, would come across what might be Costco, and when it gets built, it would be Costco, and then create even more traffic down on Flanders Road, and they don't want that. But every time I'm asking that, but now I know why they didn't want it, to close that. It's so dangerous.
I haven't heard that for a while, and when you
Yeah.
mentioned that whole.
They
And then-
are considering, I did hear now, this project goes to about the bridge overpass, which would be from the Route 1, the Route 1 bridge overpass, so they don't discuss the other side of that. The next project, okay, so those would be our kids, all our kids will be sitting here, would be dealing with that, but they did talk about creating more, elongating that on-ramp and not creating the ability to move over to 395. That would force just the people going on 395 to find another way there, either crossing Route 85 Crossroad or coming through Flanders Four Corners. It'll cut down half the traffic. Yeah, they did talk about that, but this is very specifically, 2 miles, and not including that.
And the last thing I had was, we're talking to Old Saybrook about police department coming out.
Old Lyme.
Old Lyme, I'm sorry.
Do you want me to, I haven't had a discussion since our last meeting. I think First Selectman Reem Snyder of Old Lyme put a op-ed piece in the paper that I just read the other day. It's just discussion. It's a discussion point at this point. We share a lot of synergies. We share roads that when the highway shuts down, the traffic from Old Lyme's coming into East Lyme or vice versa. And frankly, they're on a resident state trooper system, and they would love to get out of it. Well, some would. And I think she'll have more critics of that plan and that idea than we might. I think we would just gain some officers to supervise and some logistics, but we'll also have payment from them. So we'd be able to handle that with extra personnel. I think that most of the logistics and most of the political fallout, if you will, exists on the other side of the border. We're still working on it. But listen, this state problem is not this year, next year, it's going to be for 10 years. So I think it's going to force towns to start thinking outside the box. And it's just a pleasure to sit down with another leader who's just is thinking outside the box. Let's just think, what if? And we're doing that. I'm doing that with a few other towns right now on other issues. And within town, too, I might add. This is our pet project.
Which is a brain cell that I engaged earlier, but I didn't just now. During the financial discussions, I talked about some cost-saving ideas. And I'm kind of noodling on the idea that maybe we can do some kind of initiative that says anybody in town or any town employee that comes up with a savings greater than $1,000 gets $100 or something to try to generate some interest. But it just seems to me like we're halfway through the next tax season and we still haven't addressed some of the things that we talked about last year.
Suggestion box, savings contest, I love the idea.
Yeah,
Why not?
just some kind of thing that says if
Yeah.
you can save us $1,000, you can have 100, or some kind of thing to generate interest. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, we'll move on to the report from the finance director.
The reports went out in your packets. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. On the budget summary sheet, if you look at the year-to-year comparison between the current fiscal year and last fiscal year, you'll notice that the revenues are down about $1 million for the month. And typically in the month of September, we would receive the pilot grant from the state, and so that's
Right.
the difference there. So just to, give you an indication of how those non-payments are starting to affect
Impacting our
us
revenue.
budget-wise.
So that's, is that the second quarter of a pilot payment, or that's the pilot payment that was due from,
Pilot payment comes
From
100%.
July. okay, so that's a
We
big chunk.
we receive that in September, and then in October, typically we would receive an ECS payment, which is about
Well,
1.7.
right, we haven't received that
Yeah,
either.
so between the two, that's 2.6 million.
Only thing I saw in terms of your numbers is, some of the overtime lines might be creeping up a little bit on firefighters, but not really. But I know that's something you're watching. And litigation on the conservation, in terms of legal fees, were over there.
Yes.
But I understand why that had to do with that, application that came in.
But within, we'll take,
We have the
we'll look at taking
contingency.
care of that within, we'll look at taking care of that within the other legal accounts. We'll true it up at some point during the year.
Okay.
But that is a large hit at the beginning of the year.
Yes, it is. And the health and dental, that looks like it's getting a little, we're not quite 6 months yet.
Well, on the health and dental, what I've done is I've paid about half of our contribution for the year.
Okay.
So I'm paying it a little,
Ahead of,
a little ahead of schedule to help out with some cash flow issues that we've experienced in the health insurance fund.
okay, so with that said, feeling pretty good at the moment. I won't hold you to it. I'm not going to be like Lisa tonight. As you stand here today, you feel pretty good. Oh, now I'm going to have to say that.
Someone had to say it.
Okay. And then I did look up, last fiscal year, we expended $5,250 in freedom of information and legal fees. And
5,000?
yeah. And then fiscal year to date, keep in mind, we've just been billed so far for July and August. There have been no FOIA expenditures.
How did it compare to last year? Because I thought there was a lot more last year happening.
Well, last year it was $5,250 we paid out.
Some of that has to be put into the general fund because.
It doesn't seem.
Three things for me in
Yeah.
July and August. I'm not even talking about what he's got on his desk right now. So some of that might be being folded into the general,
Any bills
Are
current?
you talking about this July and August, Mark?
Yeah.
And it hasn't shown up in,
He typically breaks those out on the bill, the FOIA, so we haven't seen any yet.
And he's good about invoicing monthly? He doesn't let invoices sit there?
Oh, no, we get billed monthly.
What did they forget to do?
Oh, yes.
I did have a question about this expenditure page. It seems like percent used, there's a lot of, there's a number of things that are at the 100%, which I would take to be a one-time expense kind of thing, and that's why it's at 100%.
Or it could be because we have encumbrances.
So the ones that are 95 and 85, is that the same thing, that it's a one-time deal and it didn't cost as much as we expected? So if I look at postage, the budget was 26,000, we spent 25,000.
We haven't spent it, it's encumbered.
Okay,
So that goes into the calculation of percent expended. That's why you receive two reports. The report that, the expenditure report that's done, this format does not include the encumbrances.
so what I was looking for was opportunity. So my question would be, is that 1,400 that isn't spent, is that an opportunity to go somewhere else?
If
There
there
were-
was,
25 and not, because obviously we have to spend $25,000 in postage. Are
Right.
you holding that extra 1,000 in case we get up to past 25?
Or do we think that that's an opportunity to go somewhere else?
25,000 is a machine, if you will, and then.
Right, that's what that's for. And then, in case something else comes up, we leave a little bit of a balance there.
Okay, so that might be an opportunity, but it's too early to tell.
I didn't hear what you said.
The opportunity to go somewhere else, reallocate it to other sources.
It could be.
I tend to call them opportunities when there's extra money someplace that maybe isn't fully delegated or designated.
In that particular case, is it 25,000 into the postage machine, and then you leave 1,000 out for bulk, like for, parcels, or, certified, or those kind of
Federal
things? Is that
Express.
why? Yeah.
Federal Express.
I'm guessing
I'll buy that.
I'm guessing that we may be influenced by a decision made in the state, so I'm just, there may be something coming out of Hartford that may influence our budget. So I'm just trying to get a feel for, do we feel like there's some surpluses areas, and trying to just get a feel for how much pain is it gonna cause? And that's why I'm just, enough said. We're all doing the same thing. Thank you.
I have a few questions, Anna. When do we receive the tuition from Salem? Is that an October payment?
Actually, they pay us twice a year.
So which months do they pay?
Pardon?
Which months do they pay?
For the, are you talking about the tuition?
The tuition other districts?
Okay, so the
that-
tuition comes in, we start getting that after school starts, but there's a lag time for, us to true up with them. So, the payment should start coming.
So it comes twice a year?
Oh, no, that comes
It comes monthly?
Right, for 10 months.
Okay, so we're 3 months into the fiscal year. July, August,
Right, but
September.
they don't pay us in July and August when school's out. It
Okay, so
starts
they
with-
pay monthly starting the school year, not the calendar
Correct,
year?
Correct. So
Okay.
we just finished September, and so what has to happen is, the staff member in East Lyme has to get all the data together, and then once they get all the data, they send the bill to Salem, and then Salem pays us.
So what is the $12,000 here?
Those are for, we have some private pays that send their children here, so they have to pay the tuition for their child. to
Oh,
attend.
outside of Salem and East Lyme, other,
Well, yes. yes.
okay,
It's a Blue Ribbon School.
okay,
Well,
and,
like, for example, if there's a parent that teaches here from another town, they
Yeah.
might choose to have their child attend school here.
okay.
So they're paying the tuition.
Mhm. Okay, and when do we typically receive the ECS money? Is it towards the end of October? I mean,
It's a beginning of October payment.
okay. So I guess maybe we'll address that when we get to that on the agenda with the state budget. Okay. Other than that, you answered my only other question,
I had a
which was
question.
about the FOIA. Okay, Beth.
Anna, when they, on their memorandum of understanding between Salem and East Lyme, is there anything in that contract that says contingent upon them receiving educational cost sharing money?
Not
And since it's a monthly payment, okay, that's good.
I mean, sometimes, like, sometimes they pay, like, if we didn't receive a payment in September, which we didn't, then, like, they true up, like, sometimes within a month we receive 2 payments, but it does get paid by the end of the school.
I had a couple of questions. In the corner down here where you have the items of concern, you have the library down there. High expenditure.
Pardon?
And I'm looking at this sheet here,
Yes.
and these are usually the areas that you're watching or.
Oh, those aren't
No.
areas, that's just highlights of larger expenditures during the month.
Okay.
So once a quarter, we pay the library 25% of the budgeted
Okay.
amount.
And is the workers' comp anything to be concerned about, or is that within normal range?
That's the premium.
That's the premium, okay.
Yes.
And, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Anna? Okay, with that, we'll move on to new business discussion, state budget, municipal aid cuts.
Well, we know they're getting along.
Want me to start?
Please, floor is
Madam
yours.
Chair?
The floor is
Well,
yours.
you know, when Anna, I think, had contacted you and just perhaps suggested that we have this discussion tonight. We thought might be
Might
a
be
budget.
yeah.
And my gosh, they're running long tonight because from what I've been told, they're there. And just kind of cleaning up some bits and pieces. The governor's, well, listen, he's beating his chest a little bit in positioning himself. But I think there's a bipartisan, they are working all together. Listen, it took them 10.5 months to do it, but they're working together. They're going to come out of the room, if not tonight, if not tomorrow, but this week, they're going to come out with a budget. And they're very close. So some of this is going to be a little, preliminary and maybe this all gets resolved. But I'll let you know what we're doing in town. We're doing exactly what you suggested. Where's the $100? We're not stopping for anything. No amount's too small. Anna and I spent a day and a half meeting with department heads, every department in town, bringing them in, opening up the budgets, and discussing what they could sacrifice, discussing what could be put off till next July into the next budget. Can we take money out? Because at least then we can plan on it. At least then it can be in the budget. Because at least then we'll know, what our revenue is, not just our expenses. And we, like 168 other towns in the state, have been operating with a big question mark because nobody knows what's coming in. I think this board, I think we all worked wonderfully together, and we've been patient. We haven't grabbed and panicked. We've certainly been anxious because we should be. We're humans. But I've met with department heads. We've cut down identified some areas that could be delayed, and services that could be cut. We were asking for 5% per budget, and some budgets could, and some budgets couldn't. We've really kind of stripped it down to the bone. I know that Superintendent Newton has done the same thing on his side. He's looked at the budget, what can pass, what can be deferred, and what kind of services, et cetera, can be put off. And this is before this personnel changes. We're just talking about supplies and maintenance and all that. There's another layer that goes about, do you shut down a town hall? Do you cut everybody down 20% and shut everyone down for a day? Things that would have to be negotiated with unions and layoffs, et cetera. Maybe early retirement incentives so we can lose some people through attrition. We're working on all that, but it's not really time to start that process yet. We'll know. And from what I've heard,
I think it'll be this week, but
I know it's going to be this week. I'm going to tell you.
Another week goes by.
Obviously, I'm very close to our two representatives in town, but I've also talked to other representatives, and I've also been at a couple, since we've met, 2 CCM meetings, 3 COG meetings. We're all getting together as CEOs and talking about this. I think the legislature at this point is kind of figured out that they're 4 months now into a fiscal year, and they can't be cutting towns for $8 million without it being detrimental, because nobody planned for that.
I also understand that they're working on the educational cost sharing.
They're working on the
Reworking the
formula and all that. From what I've heard, we're going to be real close this year to, close could be $1 million. That's the new reality. That's the bar. That's maybe the baseline.
Because you had the Supreme Court argue that case too, so it's a question of time.
There's that.
for
Okay,
many
there's
years
cost
now.
sharing and issues, but we're talking pilot money you got wiped off the
sure,
table. We're
yeah.
talking local area, the road, town aid roads and LoSiP and all the other things too. So it's a wait and see, folks. We can have a discussion all night. We've had them since January. Unfortunately, we had more discussions than Hartford did about the state budget, but I think we're going to be very close. I welcome a special meeting after the budget is released, or at the very latest, we could go as November 8th, which is your next meeting. It'll be the last meeting of this board intact. It is the day after the election, but as you know, you don't get sworn in until December, so this board would still be intact. and you have a wealth of knowledge of where we are in this budget that you have worked on and created. I've talked to the tax collector and the town assessor about what's the last possible day. Should we get that massive cut and we do have to go into a supplemental tax bill? None of us want that. When's the last day that we could go? That's when they would need a decision from this board.
What was that date?
November, it would be your next regular
Or the
scheduled
next
meeting, okay? And that's if, no budget comes and we're looking at Malloy's budget, which is an $8 million cut. We'd have to get the money from somewhere. I don't think that's a reality that's gonna happen.
I don't think so.
So, November 8th, by November 8th, certainly by our next regular meeting, we have to know how that budget's going to look and be formulated, where the revenue will come from, if it's not coming from state aid, which we deserve by the calculation, by the pilot money, which we, by law, we should be paid, et cetera, et cetera. So that's your update from Town Hall. Certainly can answer questions or sit back and listen to your comments.
Well, I've talked to reps too over the weekend, and just from the place where I work, we've just gone through a 5% cut. And I was honest with both of them. I've tuned you out at this point.
Yeah.
There used to be a time when we would all watch on the CTN to see how they were going to vote. We don't really care anymore. We're just doing our jobs. So I think that message is starting to get through too, that it's not this one's fault or that one's fault. You're all going to get blamed if you don't get your act together. And I think it will happen.
I think regardless of what happens in terms of municipal aid cuts this year, if we are only $1 million short, I would consider ourselves to be very fortunate.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky indeed. But what we need to really keep in mind is all of that planning that you're doing, we need to accelerate that planning, because this is, as you said, not going to be a problem that's just confined to this fiscal year. It's going to go on 5 to 10 years. You can't walk away from, what, $5 billion of debt, in one fiscal year. So whatever you're planning, I see no reason why it couldn't be accelerated. In other words, let's not wait until we see what the budget is for this year. We know that whatever is going to happen has to start taking effect now to prepare us for the future.
I'd say after next week. Coming up.
That's what I was going to suggest, that rather than meeting 11/8, we should probably meet 11/1 or sooner, so that we have chance to do any action items, and if there's any questions and things like that, so we can come back a second time.
Why don't we
fine with
wait
me.
to see when the budget is passed, and then we'll call a special meeting? How does that sound?
My point being, I think we probably should expect to have 2 meetings in there, so, because there's going to be questions, right? We're going to have
Yeah.
the first set of
Yeah.
meetings, and we're going to ask what about, and what about, and we're going to want them to come back.
Yeah.
So we should probably try to squeeze 2 in.
So maybe
Yes, I
it'll
mean, we
be,
don't know that we have to, but I
Right.
think we're going to have to.
right, but I prefer not to put a date on it, is what I'm saying. November 1st, let's just, maybe it'll be October. Maybe it'll be next Wednesday. But
Could
let's
be
wait to
tomorrow.
see what happens, and then we can call a special meeting, if that makes sense.
And that makes the most sense, indeed.
Okay. Okay.
Some of those cuts, keep in mind, and more will be revealed, obviously, as this process continues, and there's no doubt about it. I've said it, it's a 5-year, it's a 10-year recovery process. We are going to feel it. This is an awful time to work for your municipality, to manage a municipality. It's going to be tough. There's going to be tough decisions, tough town services that will need to be cut. We're all going to share in that pain. But most of the stuff that we were looking at was deferred. Stuff that we could put off till July. We don't have the money now. We'll have to budget for it later. Fire department inspections, et cetera, that would be normally done in May. If you put it off till July, we could save a few dollars, yes, but we're going to pay the piper at some point. And some of these, it would actually have increased our budget next year by putting them off this year. But at least, again, we could plan on it. you know, right now, it's very difficult 4 months into our fiscal year to plan on anything. It's been difficult all year. But we'll be prepared for that. We're doing a whole lot of work on this, and I commend Anna for all the hard work she's put in, the extra work she's done throughout this whole process.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, we will wait and see. With that, we'll move on to the first special appropriation of 5107 for the NSEF Grant Emergency Management.
Yes, so as you know, it's painfully obvious, we're a nuclear town. We have a nuclear power base near us, and with that comes federal grant money and an expectation that our emergency management operations center, et cetera, has certain risks and that they must cover that other towns wouldn't. A town, say Woodstock, would not have some of the risks that we have to prepare for, and therefore money is available to us to apply for. As you know, the money that we paid Dick Morris, our emergency operations director, comes from these grants. But tonight is Deputy Fire Marshal, Deputy Operations, Emergency Operations Manager, Chris.
Any of the above? Sure.
Chris Taylor, who will kind of brief us on what we're going to use the money for this time around.
Good evening. The items we're looking for, some are replacement. The tools are more replacement, stuff we've had for 8 or 9 years that don't work anymore. And the computers are also computers that are 7, 8 years old, and stuff that we take into the field when we do our shelters, when we do our drills and stuff like that. We've got to carry, give the teams that go out in the field and give dosimetry to the fire department, police department for. We're just looking for the state to update all that stuff for us. Part of the process when we submit all the stuff is either looking at state bid for pricing and finding the best pricing for it, and getting multiple bids on stuff. So we try to find the best price possible, submit it to them, and go forward. So, any questions?
Any questions?
So you did get multiple quotes for the laptops?
We did, yep. Look at state bid, we've looked at some local vendors, we looked at some of the stuff online, and the ones we found were the best price on those. Or having rugged computers, being able to go out in the wall, take the weather and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just easier for us if we see all the other bids so that we can see that, yep, this 16 is less than whatever the other prices are. It's low enough, I mean, it's not huge in the delta right now. If you save, it's not worth the manpower to do it, but it's just easier for us to make the decision if we see the data.
I know that was.
Now,
Yeah.
for me, you saying that you did it would be sufficient. I'm fine.
But if I'm understanding this correctly, once we make this purchase, we'll be reimbursed with the
100%.
grant.
Yep.
So they've already approved this quote that you've gotten.
Correct.
Right. So we spend the money, we send them the invoice, we get reimbursed.
100%, correct.
Up to the limits of the grant, of course.
Right.
And that's why.
And the grant's coming from the state or coming from?
From the state, yeah.
Is that not federal?
It's, sorry,
No,
federal.
it's
fund.
federal
Yeah,
money.
federal
Okay.
fund.
Spending state money is not
Not
a
the
good thing
state.
right now. That's what I'm saying. If it's state money, then I'm going to look
We
at
go
it a
through
little
Region
closer.
4 from Mike Kaplan, and then they send it on.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have no other questions.
There's no further questions. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to move to approve a special appropriations in the amount of $5,107 to revenue account 0104-400-401 NSEP, grant and budget account 01-70-725-224-006, and the NSEP equipment for the purchase of 20-volt max lithium-ion cordless combo kit and semi-rugged laptops for the EOC to be used in the field during disasters.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the next item, special appropriation $17,500 for police radios.
I'm presenting tonight, apparently.
Okay.
I know you all like to have one of the police officers here, because they can update you on all the things as well. You know, there was a bomb scare in our high school the other evening, and I want to commend the police, our emergency operations fire department, everybody, and schools. They all worked together like a symphony. This is the case here, folks. We went to trade in the radios we had to buy new radios, and we were offered $4,250 for those radios. Mike Masick on his own, as you know how good a representative in this town he is, he went out on eBay or wherever you go to sell radios, and collected $17,000, almost 4 times the amount of money he would have received. So what would have been a non-event, because I think the money is already appropriated for the radios, but so the trade-in, we wouldn't even be here if we traded them in. Instead, he took the initiative to go get the money, and because it's going through the general account, we need to reappropriate that back into the radios. They want to use the $17,000 they gained into buying better radios, not better radios, but the radios that they're going to replace and buy an extra 1 or 2. So that's what they're doing. We use the same vendor for all the radios. They've already been vetted. We already got the lowest bid. We buy the radios from the same people who are going to program them and put them into our system, and then also service them as part of our network. We don't want to get different radios from different vendors, of course. So I wish Mike Masick was here, Sergeant Masick, or Chief Finkelstein, because I know you'd want to commend them for the work they did here.
I misread this. I read this and it's like, now, wait a second, this police department's asking for another $17,000 after they just got done saying they're not gonna ask more?
So they
So when
sold
I first
radios.
read this, my blood went up a little bit. But to hear that what they're doing is they're saving money and they're reallocating it back, I think is excellent. I agree.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that's what I was reading.
Yeah,
you
So
did.
they sold
Well,
them for 17 and
You
they're
got
buying
to check
them
your
for-
eyesight on
Yeah.
that, because this doesn't happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now it does.
I absolutely love the direction our town is going in, like with this type of initiative. I think
Yeah.
it's wonderful, and I wish it
They're
was
owning
here.
it. They're owning it. They
Gotta
have
get the name
it's
of
their
it.
own, you know?
Yeah.
With all this happiness, I'll make a motion. Move to approve a special appropriation.
Quickly.
In the amount of before changes, $17,500 received from the sale of the state police radios and equipment no longer needed to revenue account 01-08-800-817, parentheses, miscellaneous police, and parentheses, and to establish a budget account titled PS-Police Portable Radios, end quote, for the purpose of new town portable radios.
I'll
Is there-
second.
Thank you. With that, I'll call for all those in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next on the list.
Gotta get the name of the website.
Special appropriation, $2,150 purchase for a town fleet vehicle.
This is hysterical.
This met some discussion at the Board of Selectmen meeting, if you were paying attention to it, and had some discussion in town afterwards. We have an active town hall with our folks not sitting behind a desk, but going out and doing the proper inspections as dictated by statute that they're supposed to do. We typically hand down, as you know, fleet cars. Cars from town end up in the town hall parking lot. They get the leftovers all the time. This is another case of leftovers where this vehicle was part of the asset forfeiture, where it's a drug-related car. Drug deal goes down, we get the assets, and our state police own that property, and they're supposed to. It's not our police. It's not just. It's our police.
You said
You
state.
said
I'm sorry,
police.
if I said state, our police own that property, and they're supposed to auction the money, the cars off, or use them. Some, depending on the car, we might use it for a detective car, we might use it for an undercover, and we do that. Now everyone knows, but that does happen from time to time. In this case, there is a vehicle that's identified that would be proper to use for town use here at the town hall. Diane Vitaliano, as you know, is our town assessor. She's here to answer any questions of why this is an important thing. As you know, we have a new town assessor, a new person coming in with new style, new eyes, going out in town, discovering new businesses that we didn't know were there, and has done a remarkable job. You'll see it reflected in the grand list. You'll see it reflected in the number of businesses that will be listed that may not have been paying their fair share. And Diane is a stickler for doing things right. She's here to answer your questions. Joe's here to answer your questions about the need. Of course, our Public Works Director, Joe Bergaw, referred to, about our need, and for all the people in this town, this is going to be a fleet car, not Diane's car, and that's important for you to know. The question came up at the Board of Selectmen, well, we're increasing our fleet. You and I both have worked real hard to not increase services in town to maintain the line. This is a need we see is needed and identified. It is increasing the fleet by one. There's insurance costs related to it, I get it. But we also have an active bunch of department heads that are going out into the field, getting the work done for us. And I'll let the two experts that use these kind of things explain further. I don't know who you'd like to see first. Maybe first Joe, and Diane can be standing by about why her needs have increased. So, Joe, could you speak a little bit into the podium about how the car we use now is used by 3 different departments, and everyone's looking for the key, and who's got it today?
We always look at who's out of the office that day. Diane comes down to our office on a daily basis, and what car can we use? We're juggling it. Well, this person isn't in, and it's not really the way to do business of every day from a reliability standpoint for that department. She's expressed a need of needing this vehicle. I would almost say we're not really growing the fleet. It's a town vehicle right now. It actually, the highway department maintains this vehicle. We pay for the gas when the police have to use it. And I know this board has asked us not only when we're trying to get prices on new cars, but look at used. Well, here's a $2,100 vehicle that actually runs, that our mechanics are saying is actually in pretty good shape. And there's no guarantee at the end of this time that when this runs its course, that's not to say that the town fleet is going to say we need a new car. It just this is just an unusual opportunity where there's a vehicle that the police have that we're maintaining that we know is in good shape. So that's where we're at, and I can speak by Diane coming down to her office. She's down there, and we're just juggling. Here's the key. I mean, they're not our vehicles; they're the town's vehicles. We're just trying to get out there and do our thing, but it's just not very good right now, and we have to share vehicles so people are. We're trying to avoid paying mileage for people, because that then adds up at 50 cents a mile as well. So.
You
And
sold me, but if you
No, you
Well, I
want to
just-
bring other people up to talk about the
Having
car.
a personal car going into a driveway or a business is probably not the right message we're sending to maybe,
I'm
someone's
convinced.
business.
So does this vehicle have lettering on it then?
Well,
As-
it will have a magnet
Like
on
the
it.
town of East Lyme?
Yeah, it was Town of East Lyme assessor when that department uses it. It will have a town plate
has
on it.
EL plate
Which
on it.
actually, it will have a
Should be a
EL,
number.
whatever number it is. So that, when people see that EL plate, that stands out that, okay, that's more than your typical car. That's not an undercover, that's the real deal. Because we get the calls, hey, 56 or 58 or 62 or whatever it is, you gotta look at that vehicle, so people can notice when it has a town plate on it.
Okay.
I'd
And
like
it,
to
and it
create
has
one.
an engine in it?
It does have an engine.
This car for $2,150?
Well, it actually, I think it says it in the documents, but if this went for retail, it'd be like 4,000, and then for average, we put the low end on what we're buying it for, because we have to pay back the PD, but Highway Department maintains this. We're doing everything we're getting it all ready so we can buy it, which
So-
is not your typical, so we're buying it for
So if,
wholesale.
so if the town buys this vehicle, then the proceeds go into the police
Asset
budget?
forfeiture.
Right, as for training,
Asset
asset forfeiture.
Asset forfeiture, which means they can only spend it on certain
Training.
things.
Which is in paragraph 1 here.
Correct.
Right, so we're not really spending the money back out to the town. It comes back
Right.
into our town, and just in a different department.
Right,
Just the way it.
and we could apply that towards overtime if they're over in that area?
No, it has to go toward
Maybe
drug
training.
prevention,
And
Sounds like a good plan.
training, drug training,
Do you
I don't
have
have
a
an issue with
dog
this.
food for the K-9.
Do you have a town hourly rate that you use when you try to figure out business cases for town employees?
We didn't get the question over here. It's a long way.
So for a business case, you got a town rate, how much you pay the average town employee, fully burdened with fringe and benefits and everything else. So I suspect if it's in that $60 an hour range, which is probably fully burdened, then it takes about 35 man-hours for this car to pay for itself. And that's just kind of what I'm saying, is that the time that it takes to chase keys, it pays for itself, 35 hours.
And the 50 cents an hour, or 50 cents a
Yes.
mile,
Yeah.
and all,
I'm good.
that's
That's
the
what I was
expense
thinking.
that adds
Makes
up.
sense.
It's a lot. It
Yeah,
adds up.
that adds up quick.
Mhm.
It does. Would you like to ask any questions, since Diane took time away from her family this evening? Would you, I'd like to ask Diane a question, I'm sure the commission has. But why do you have to go on the road? Why is it important to be on the road?
Well, that's where we discover everything.
Well, I'm gonna hide from you now, I know what kind of party you're having.
To build the grand list, we have to discover, list, and value all property in town. And I can't discover it from my office. And so I've tried to take some initiative in getting out there more. I've instituted a few more plans for, we track houses that are listed for sale. And we compare that with our records. We send out mailings. They are
Tear down
anxious
the
to
porch.
have us go in there because they want their house at that time to be as valuable as possible. So they call us, schedule an appointment. You know, I send a letter, they call us, schedule an appointment, we go out there. We are now able to see that their kitchen's remodeled, their bath's remodeled, they have a finished basement area, they have all of this additional stuff that we didn't know. We wouldn't pick that up until the next revaluation, which is a full fiscal revaluation. So not only are we picking that up and adding it to our tax rolls, but we also don't have to pay the reval company to inspect that property during our next revaluation, which is full physical. So it's win-win. And the same thing with all of our building permits. We are able to go out on the building permits. When we go out on the building permits, we pick up the grade and the quality of a building, which you may not get just from looking at the plans. Also, there's a percentage of completion, and it's important for us to be able to accurately determine what that percentage of completion is for October 1, because we pick up that partial construction for that October 1 grand list. Again, wonderful. So then we also have the certificate of occupancies, and all of these I send letters, and I have them call us and schedule. So I take an appointment, and then I build a neighborhood around it, so that when I go out into the field, or when my staff goes out into the field, we are trying to cover that entire neighborhood. So it makes scheduling difficult with other vehicles, because we're looking for chunks of time, and they have to, you know, use the vehicles, go here, come back, go there, come back. I want to do it efficiently, so I build schedules around these appointments. And for the certificate of occupancy, I could go on all night.
Now you see why Diane won my Rookie of the Year award. She's just a great addition to our town. We're really happy to have her, but she's available for questions.
I know when I was on Board of Assessment Appeals, that percent complete was a big sticking point
Big deal.
sometimes for some of the bigger developments that were going on when I was there, and they would say they were this percent complete, and we were always debating that percent complete, so that by itself, for a $2,000 bill, I mean, we've beat this thing to death.
But
We don't-
while I have you at the podium, I will ask you a question.
Okay.
During the budget season, we approved some extra consulting dollars for your department to go out and do some personal property tax audits.
Yes,
Is that
yes,
underway?
it was replacing money that had been cut. Yes,
Right,
so we
yes.
spent $3,000 on the personal property audits, and that resulted in tax dollars of $12,659. So for that $3,000 spent, we
Very
got
good.
almost
Yeah.
$13,000. So now that money will, those savings will be carried forward also.
To fund the next year, and it will kind of roll forward, and
Yes.
Nice job, Diane.
Yes,
Thank
but
you.
once they report, then they have to continue reporting those assets for the
Right,
future
right.
years. So it's
Very good.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
wonderful.
It's exponential, though.
Yes,
Yes. Mhm. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. With that, do I have a motion?
Well, I could move to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $2,150 from CNRE Fund 32, account number 32-60-120-100-002, proceeds from the sale of vehicles, to purchase a 2003 Subaru Legacy wagon from the Police Department asset forfeiture for the use of other town departments, primarily Assessment Department.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 400.
I hope it stays on the road for a year.
Everybody I know with the Subaru has loved it.
It's on.
Everyone was.
And next on the list is amend a special appropriation, East Lyme Community Center boiler replacement.
Just to start it by, just along the same line of the police radios, so we're not, this is actually a good thing, this is more money, just so we're up front. When we talked about the boiler replacement at the community center, which we're about to flip the switch in the next day or two, it's just about done now, you know, in October 10th, it's kind of scary, but, at the time, to put it together, we took half the money from carried over from last year. At the time, the floor that Eversource gave me was $13,800, and the rest we're going to take out of this, the HVAC CNRE. The program, as I showed you guys, was a 50% match. I couldn't say a 50% match because they told me the floor. Well, we're getting the 50% match. So we're getting $24,600 more. So at the time, the way this was scripted, that $24,600, now it's great, money's coming back in the town. But what I talked to Anna is that would be cleaning out the HVAC CNRE for any other projects, and we really don't like to come back every single time anything breaks down to this board. That's the whole reason why you have an HVAC CNRE. Right now, we have an issue with an air handle at the PD I couldn't do anything with. But if we take the $24,600 and put it back to the original purpose of the account, and that's what this is all about. And, you know, whether it's this grant or as part of this grant, and it was all put together in the same bucket, we're getting an extra $40,000 in the streetlight rebate, extra money that we didn't expect, and that gave us an extra $70,000 more. So we are, like you mentioned before, we're always looking for grants, and we're always looking for incentives, and this is extra money coming in a time when we need it most. So that's all it is changing, redistributing the money so we can put it back in the HVAC CNRE, so that if anything breaks, we're not asking for money there, because that's why you have the money set aside.
I like it.
That's where we're at.
Good work, Joe, listen, this is found money. This is a rebate that was supposed to be this, and it's this.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Doesn't get better. Any questions or concerns?
Good job.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thanks.
nice job. All right, do I
Good
have a
news
motion?
tonight, right?
This was a good night.
Every
You
year
wanna
should be an
go first?
election year. Every month.
I'm just happy that our advice is being taken a little more seriously these days. All right, with that, do I have a motion?
I think it's Peter's turn.
Okay, my turn. Move to amend the special appropriation in the amount of $76,854 approved at a special town meeting August 16, 2017, for the purchase and installation of a boiler replacement at East Lyme Community Center as follows: $38,400 Eversource incentive to replace heating equipment, original amount $13,800. $3,374 in account 32-70-300-500-005 HVAC pump replacement townwide, original amount $27,974.
I'll second.
With that, it should be noted that a town meeting is required. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 400. That concludes the new business this evening.
For the portable radios, there's also a town meeting required. I don't know that we noted that.
I didn't.
It's okay,
That's
it's already,
okay.
it's on the sign call, we'll be there.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to old business. We have 6 items to discuss. It would be wonderful if we could keep each of those items to 5 minutes or less.
One day.
Well, you're gonna get a fight for me.
Purchasing policy, we have not been meeting as much as I would like, so out of frustration as much as anything else, I rewrote the policy. I took our existing policy, rewrote it, took input from Colchester and Trumbull. So it's ready for the board, the subcommittee to review. 2 action items that I'd like to discuss. One is the sale of surplus items, which our current purchasing policy doesn't talk to. And one of them was there were some considerations about local vendors, whether or not they should get a priority or not. So there's some verbiage that I took from Colchester and Trumbull that talk about both of those things. The one thing I did think about afterwards is that the Board of Ed's got a purchasing policy, and I haven't looked at that yet. So I'd like to review that just to make sure that we have any commonality through there. That's all. Oh, and we have a meeting scheduled for
Next is it 2 weeks out? First
like the
weekend?
19th, and that's why when you mentioned the 19th, I don't know if that's gonna work.
Okay,
I think it's the 19th.
Next week.
Meeting.
yeah.
Yes, I try to pull it in as much as I can.
It was
because
just before the Board of
this-
Selectmen
This
meeting.
subcommittee really should have been done a
Is
while
that
ago.
next week?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's next week.
So-
19th is Thursday, Selectmen's Wednesday.
I suspect it will be done, I hope, at that meeting. And then we'll be ready to present it to the Board of Selectmen, and they can do with it what they please. Okay.
Very good.
Board of Ed permanent maintenance account, that turned into, I want to use the same terminology. So they have a non-lapsing education account, ad hoc subcommittee is what they were calling it. But really what it came down to is, I think we created a couple co-chairs and started talking about what the whole scope of this team was going to be. And it really is going to come down to just logistics. How do we make a boiler list of everything, or a shopping list of everything that they want to do with $1 on it? And then where's that water line that says this is what we can afford to do, and this is what we can't afford to do? This is a long-term project, this is a short-term project. So it primarily focused on maintenance, although I know initially it was kicked off to maintain the turf field. That was one of the issues. It's a long-term maintenance fee, but there are air handlers in there that are at question, and a series of other things. So we had 1 half-hour meeting, got everybody together, talked about it, and the next meeting, hopefully we'll get into a little bit more meat. But I think the logistics of how are we gonna put money aside, that's Board of Ed, long-term maintenance money. Logistically, how do we keep that separate? They really don't want it in their budget. I think we need it in our budget, but they need to know that they can get it when they want it. Because I don't think they have a way to
I
store
think that's what
long-term.
when you're saying that was about the non-reoccurring kind of contingency account, but we can't do that unless they give permission. Yeah, and I thought also that the turf field also kind of evolved anyway into a 10-year,
The
kinda
separate
like-
line item, I think, in that same,
yeah.
so we've started, we've got work to do, but we're all in agreement that this is something we have to do, and we'll probably bring in the other town, like Jeff said, bring all the other town elements and try to get the same tool that's gonna deal with all the long-term maintenance needs. Preliminary, but it shouldn't be a real long subcommittee, because we're all pretty much in violent agreement that we just need to come up with a tool. That's that about that.
Just a quick question for you. Who's on the subcommittee? Yourself and Lisa from the Board of Finance, and who's on the Board of Ed side?
Oops, sorry. Here's your roster there.
So Eric Bauman, Candace Carlson, Barbara Senges, Mariana Stevens. Okay, very good. Thank you. Beth, you're up. Study other town wages and benefits?
Well. This is what I propose, of getting together with Anna prior to this November meeting to review that paperwork on the other towns. But I also want to say, be careful what you wish for in terms of guideposts, in terms of whether or not we're close or far away, could hurt or help. But given this situation, budget situation, I don't know how helpful it would be, but we can certainly look to see if we're under and over. And that can be then carried on in the future, maybe with upcoming contracts, I would think, is where would use the information. But you also might want to use it for the unaffiliated, but they kind of follow the other. so I'll call you.
We've
Have we,
You know,
have
my
we
last day.
In the
Anna, have
next
we
month.
completed
Yeah.
the salary
I'll call you
survey
in
for
January.
CCM for this fiscal year?
No, we had that meeting, remember, we had a bunch of different towns. We do have something, regionally, we've done something.
I mean, I have one of my staff members fill it out.
Yeah.
They like to, check with her to confirm that.
I thought we did one, you did one regionally,
Well, it's done-
using the towns that are in the, I don't know if it was in the COG, but mostly along the shoreline.
Yeah, and then CCM, as you know, I think, Madam Chair, you accessed the CCM one earlier in the year. It's tough to always
I
compare apples
accessed
to
it.
apples.
'Cause
I
then you-
accessed it just the other day also, and it wasn't clear to me whether that was last year's.
Because then you also have
budget
to
or this
compare
year.
job descriptions and responsibilities, which are going to be worded different and
It
have different
might
elements
not
in
be-
each one.
Knowing CCM, it might not be updated, like, it might not be a rigid schedule.
Yeah.
It might be updated as they receive information,
Right.
when they choose to receive
But-
information.
Give us a window to do the entry, and at some point this month,
Mhm.
or it's done.
Right.
Mhm.
So I'll.
I'm sure that window is
But it's a
open
really,
right
it's
now.
a really useful tool
Because of the
for this
budget.
purpose, and I think that if
Yeah.
you printed that out and shared it with that could be really helpful. And certainly we don't want to go down and compare ourselves to Fairfield or anything, but certainly the surrounding towns is, if they've done it, could be very useful.
We don't know where we fall on that line either, so maybe it's, it's a useful tool, depending on what it
Yeah.
reveals.
Yeah. Some, obviously some, when you talk about unaffiliated, some positions, these people are hired, they have a contract, this is what they're getting paid, and they get their 2.5%, or whatever, or 0%,
Right.
probably next year. But it is what it is, but it's, especially when we're hiring the new fresh person, Diane,
Right.
Darlene. We went back in and we did detailed analysis of where that needed to be. In assessor's case, it dropped $20,000.
But you're also
and-
comparing that against longevity and other things.
Right, there's
Yeah.
all that, and longevity of the job obviously is driving up the cost
So
of
that's
some
another factor too,
positions.
also, in looking at wages, when you do a wage study.
Mhm.
You have to also look at the term length of service and whether or not there was longevity
Mhm.
put in there.
Last time I tried to do this exercise, it was the job description that drove us crazy.
Yep.
Because everybody's job description, one town might have the assessor do X and Y,
I
where the other
know,
town
I
has to
know.
do.
But
It's-
the important thing here is really to capture the range, the salary range, so that if somebody's getting up to that 95 percentile of their range, then maybe we just have to pull back on merit increases and just focus on the cost of living. That's something that you'd want to focus on going forward. So that these longevity issues, you can't go beyond what the
Yeah,
set
there's-
range is.
And that's the issue, is the scale and
Mhm.
that step thing. Well, we're trying to tackle the step thing anyway, trying to go in a different direction, maybe 3 steps in the course of a career. The hiring number, 3 years in, hey, you're pretty good. Here's the step. 5 years later, here's the step, and then there's a top step somewhere in the 10-year range. That's it.
That's
And then
it.
there's COLA, and then there's just COLA. It's
Right,
cost of
right.
living, gross wage increase. That seems to be the way to go. We're working on that language. Obviously, there are people in town that are depending on the steps, and that's what they were hired in. But we're gonna try to finesse that. We've been meeting with the unaffiliated group, not as regularly as we should, and we'll get together on that. They obviously will have another contract coming up soon. All good points.
Okay.
One example, when we talked about job description, and it came to mind when you were saying it, we always talk about Joe Burgon. He's a hybrid, such a hybrid. But even Dave Putnam, we all weren't around, but we eliminated the youth service department head,
Right.
and we folded it into Dave's job. So he's taken 2 department heads now, and he got compensated somewhat for that, but not double. And of course, we're also talking about a town that is far different. If you're the Parks and Rec director in Ledyard, great town, but they don't have the beaches we have, the events we have, the ball fields we have, and everything else. So it's a whole different caliber of person that would qualify to be a Parks and Rec director here.
And when your planning and zoning is combined versus separate, and...
There's all that too, it's
There's-
downstairs.
yeah.
You know, Gary does 2 jobs, he does wetlands. Norwich, Waterford, they have a wetlands officer, they have a planning officer. We've combined, right?
I'd like to have planning and zoning combined them.
Yeah, I'd like that too.
It's a
I
little
said that out
odd.
loud, didn't I?
I think it was like, what, 12 years ago out on the, no, never mind.
In time,
We tried
everything
to do
evolves,
that.
right?
We tried to do it a long time ago.
Okay,
Drive revision, huh?
discussion of the audit schedule.
Yes, I'm moving along, getting everything done, so, I'll be ordered within early next month.
Very good. That's what I recall from our last meeting, that they were set to come in the beginning of November. Still on track? Very good, thank
So
you.
the last meeting I was at, we were talking about that's delayed because the summer ends up getting very busy. Is that same discussion we were talking about?
No.
Maybe I'm confusing 2 different issues.
Mhm.
Because we were talking about bringing in a software upgrade.
Well, it's just been delayed, and we're gonna try to stay on a schedule.
I think we
had
cut
some
it again,
discussion
didn't we?
at the last meeting. Bottom line is, we gotta try to stay on schedule and get this information out. Our software does make it difficult. There are hurdles we need to jump through that other towns can push a button, we don't. But we're
Right,
gonna
right.
try a little harder to get them in early, and
Right.
get the information to them early.
Because what I was
The
gonna
ways of
suggest,
staff.
what I was gonna suggest was that activity that had to be done during the summer months when it was really busy. That's a good time to bring in interns or people, maybe school teachers that aren't actively working, that could come in and help with some of that kind of math and stuff. So that might be an opportunity for a temp kind of position.
Put that in your budget.
Well, so, just getting back to the software, that's something that we've been dealing with for a number of years. So as I recall, that wasn't really the issue with falling behind last year. The issue was some personnel changes, both on our end and the auditor's end. And that if they didn't have certain data in front of them by December 1st at the latest, that throws them way behind, because I guess they have bigger, better clients to work on than us. Yes.
Well, they better careful if they're saying that.
Okay, but that's good, we're on track, I thank you for that. And the turf field fundraising, kind of wraps into that permanent maintenance account discussion, right?
Yeah, we didn't talk specifically about that, but I think that item B, C, or E and F rather, are all interrelated.
Yeah. Well, definitely B, E, and F,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So I wouldn't think that you would get to that with only 1 half-hour meeting so far.
No, we didn't actually.
Okay. So we'll-
Philosophically, we did, but not to any granularity.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have another update at the next meeting. Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the board during public discussion? Any questions at all? Hearing none, we'll move on to board comments. We'll start down this end with Bill, if you have any.
No, I don't have any that I haven't already shared today. I think I shared quite a few issues about the cost reduction ideas and things like that I think that we need to get active on.
Mhm.
That's all.
Peter?
I'm good.
I'm
You
fine.
are, you are good.
I'm fine too. I have no comments.
They were talking louder than.
No, I just said that I've already had my conversations during the night. I'm good.
During the normal
To
course of the meeting.
paraphrase Peter, I'm good.
Okay. So hearing no board comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a- I'd second.
Great. All those in favor?
Uh,
Aye.
Motion carries
Good night.
400.